All right, guys. Awesome. So my name is Andres, and for those of you guys who don't know me, this is the Baking Steel Test Kitchen, and today we are making New York style pizza. Chef Craig here, and we're gonna get right into this. We thought we would make dough, make pizza, and then ball our dough up, and then we'll get the question and answers afterwards. So before we get into making pizza, let's talk New York style dough. And our New York style dough, first of all, you need to have a scale. If you're measuring dough, it's a science project. And the only way we can dial in our science project is with a digital scale. We need to measure everything. We like to use metrics because it's a little bit more accurate, but the flour to water ratio is critical. And the only way to really do that is with measuring by weight. So it's an investment. If you really want to improve your pizza making, you really need to make that investment into the dough, into that scale. Okay, so keep that in mind. Flour, we're using a bread flour. This is an organic, high gluten, high mountain flour from Central Milling. It's the equivalent of like a King Arthur bread flour. We like it. It's got a lot of protein content. It's strong. It'll hold its shape, and it can withstand a 2 or 3 day fermentation. A lot of these all-purpose flours aren't going to be strong enough to withhold that, so we like a strong flour, organic if you got it. So we've pre-measured everything here. In our recipe, we have flour, salt, water, yeast, and in New York style, we're adding in a sweetener. So we're going to use a honey. In fact, we're using a Mike's Hot Honey. Shout out to these guys. They're awesome. And we're using an olive oil. And the olive oil is going to soften our glutens. When we add that in last, it's going to kind of get into those gluten strands and lube them up. So it gives a little bit of softer chew, if that makes sense to you. And it's awesome. Totally. We've pre-measured everything here, and we've got dough staged, but we like to do at least a 24-hour fermentation, preferably 2 or 3 days. So let's take you through the steps. Our flour, I'm going to tell you what's in these, and we'll spell it out with the follow-up email, but we have 500 grams of bread flour. I'm going to add in 16 grams of sea salt, and as I add my ingredients in, I'm going to whisk them together, okay? So whisk it like that, maybe about 10-15 seconds. Don't time me. My yeast, this is 2 grams of active dry yeast. If you follow us a lot, we don't use a lot of yeast. That's 2 grams, which is about 20% of one of those yeast packages, so not a lot. You can notice I'm not blooming it first in my water. We find that to be an additional step, not necessary. I'm whisking my yeast in. Now I've got my liquids. I have water, honey, and oil. I'm going to add the oil last, after I'm done kind of mixing this stuff up together. So first it goes in my water. This is filtered water because I drink it that way, so I cook with my water filter. Take my spatula and kind of mix it in. At the same time, I'm going to add my sweetener. And if you don't have Mike's Hot Honey, you can add regular honey. You can add sugar. We're using 25 grams of honey. I'm going to pour that right into my batch here. I like this spatula a lot, by the way, these GIRs, because they're kind of stiff, but they're really easy to clean. And so now I'm going to mix up my honey in here. And I'm going to remove everything and put it right on the counter. Follow me so far. This is pretty basic, right? Scrape my bowl out. Now I'm using a wood counter. If you don't have wood, obviously granite's great. I like wood naturally because it kind of stays the temperature of the room. And now what I'm going to do is just take my spatula, slide underneath it, and press. And what I'm doing is I'm pressing out pressing the water and the flour in together so I don't have any, dried clumps. which can happen if I don't do this right. And if I'm at home and my first few times, mixing this together, I might use a timer and do this for 2 or 3 minutes. And that's about how long it takes. And that's working pretty vigorously for 2 or 3 minutes, not just kind of hanging out, drinking your coffee. It's literally kneading, pressing my palm into it, scraping underneath it. Like I said, vigorous work for 2 or 3 minutes. And let's make sure I get all that dried flour underneath. You can see it's starting to form one nice big ball, one big mound. And what I'm going to do is actually going to add my olive oil, the secret ingredient of New York style dough, at the, or a little fat, I should say. You could probably use any kind of oil. I just think the flavor of olive oil is nice too. So when I get my dough just about done, kind of formed, like this is what I'm making my typical 3-day dough, this would be it. But I'm going to add some oil in here. Slowly, add a little bit in, kind of mix it in. This is 25 grams of oil. Is that right, 25 grams? About 25 grams. It gives it a nice little color too. I'll finish adding this. And oil is actually nice because it helps the dough not stick to your hands. You can see it's turning a little bit more golden with that olive oil color, which is beautiful. Again, on a scale of 1 to 10, the skill level here is maybe a 3 on a scale of 1 to 10. I'm just pressing it in, evenly distributing that oil as well as I can by hand. And now I'm about done. Okay, so my next step is to take this dough and put it back into its container. Take my lid, make this airtight. And I'm going to do is take this dough is going to sit on my countertop for the next 24 hours, 12 to 24. It's cold this time of year. So I might leave it out for 24 hours. So tomorrow I'll take this and put it into the fridge. The idea is to let it proof like overnight first. Then we cold ferment it for 2 days, maybe 3 days. And we have now developed this incredible flavor. So we've already done this. Fast forward 2 or 3 days. It's the day, let's call it Friday night. We're going to make some pizza. We remove the dough from the fridge. This is a smaller portion of that. It's going to pretty much double in size. We remove it from the fridge, and now we make our dough balls probably about 4 to 5 hours before we're going to bake. So be mindful. So if I'm making pizza Friday night at 6 o'clock, at like noon I'll come out and make my dough balls. Okay, so what I do with my dough balls is I remove the dough, and this batch that we just made is going to make, what we say, 300 gram dough balls, or maybe 2 450-ish. So it's about 900 grams total. So it depends if you want to make them really big, or for our size baking steel, 300 grams is a pretty good size pizza. If you want to go full New York style, we're looking at like 16 to 18-inch pizzas. You need to use a baking steel pro or something big. We got a 16-inch round steel heating up. In fact, we'll give you guys a close-up in a little bit. 16-inch, preheating this thing for an hour. So today we're making, I think we did 450 gram dough balls. I'm going to show you how I make a dough ball first, then we'll get into pizza making. Remove your dough, divide up into the size that you'd like. Flour up your hands, okay? Because the dough's sticky. I even flour up my dough ball. I'm not shy about that, okay? And now what I'm going to do is pick the dough up and just gently fold it in half, like this. I'm going to turn it sideways, and I'm going to grab each side and just kind of lightly press it in, like almost like a heart, and then close. And remember, this is not a stress ball. This is a dough ball. So we want to be gentle and kind. Press in and then close it and turn. Each time I do this, I'm knocking a little bit of the air out, and I'm making a tighter ball. And what I'm doing is I'm trapping all those gluten strands inside this dough. and the natural gases inside. So we have a nice final proof. So turn it and press in and close. And this, I'm keeping the same sequence over and over again. I do this about 15 to maybe 25 times. Turn, it's getting more and more taut each time. It's like this. You can see like the smooth side almost looks like a baby's butt at this point, right? And I've got this open seam side. And eventually when I get done and it gets really tight, I'm gonna take that smooth side, put it into my palm, and then I'm gonna pinch it almost like a dumpling. You can see, almost like a dumpling, right? I can even cross it this way. Really, really pinch it. I've got this humongous 450 gram dough ball. And if I'm baking this today, I'm gonna leave it out. You can put it in a sheet tray, you can put it back in your dough container. You can just put it on a plate, but you want to cover it so it's airtight, so it doesn't develop a crust on it, and let it rest for 4 to 5 hours. It's going to expand. Remember, we just trapped all the natural gases inside of this ball by closing it. Now, as it relaxes and gets warmer, it's going to start to expand. And that's what's going to give it all that airiness that we love in pizza at home. All right, so I'm going to put this in my container. And we're going to go to phase 2, and that we clean up. And we're going to get into actually making a New York style pizza. And if you guys have any questions, please just jot them down. We will get to them shortly, like after class. Okay, so phase 2 is we made our dough balls, and let's fast track 5 hours. It's pizza making time, right? What we do is we preheat our baking steel in our oven on our top rack at 500 degrees for a good hour. And if you don't have a baking steel yet, you're missing out. But 2, use your pizza stone. We still want to do a preheat for 1 hour. Okay, it's got to be in there getting super hot. The same time we made our dough balls 4 or 5 hours ago. And I want to show you guys a close-up of what we did this morning at like 6 a.m. You can see this is the one we just made. These are actually all the same size. You can see this. This is the one we just made here. These ones have been sitting out for, 4 or 5 hours now. It's relaxed. It's bigger. It's going to help us stretch it out. If we try to stretch out the one we just rolled up, balled up, the glutens are too tight. It's not going to go anywhere. The one that we did 4 or 5 hours ago, it's like it did this nice long hot yoga class. And the dough and the muscles are so relaxed, it's going to stretch really easy. Let's do this. So I'm going to take this dough out of the container, put this back over here for a few minutes, flour up in front of me, place the dough right into that flour. You guys see what I'm doing here? Right? And now what I'll do, flour a little bit more, turn it over once or twice, just so my dough doesn't stick. When that's ready, I'm going to take my pizza peel. And this is a Baking Steel Pro, so it's actually bigger than most. It's 16 inches. It's humongous in diameter, right? That's huge. I'm going to lube this up. And when I say lube it up, I'm using semolina flour, and I'm using flour for my dough. I brush that around. Think of the flour and the semolina flour as your ball bearings. It's really critical to have that on there. The better I get at doing this, the less I'm going to use. But my goal being to get it into the oven, so be a little generous in the beginning. Set that aside. Now let's go back to the dough. Flour up my fingertips. Make sure it's not going to stick to my table. And I'm going to, using my fingers, I'm going to lightly press in. And this is a monster dough, by the way. I'm used to dealing with 250 gram balls. This one's 450-ish. It's a lot bigger, a lot more mass. Not for the weekend warrior. This is going to take some practice to get stretching this size out. When it gets to be probably like 7 or 8 inches, I'm going to pick it up and put it on my knuckles. And if I was a good pizza tosser, this is when I'd be turning it. right? Oof. And throwing in the air. But today, we're going to just work our hands underneath it and let gravity do all of its work. Kind of turn it and give it a little stretch and a little shake. And the glutens are so relaxed, I'm barely doing anything. It's kind of doing its own thing. That's gravity. It's beautiful, too. Look how big this is getting, right? And I could probably stretch this all the way to 16 inches. That's how big my Pro Pack steel is. It's a 16-inch steel. My peel is 16 inches. I'm probably at about 13 or 14 right now. You guys can see. It's gorgeous. When I'm almost to where I want to be, it's going to contract a little bit. I'm going to get my peel. I'm going to clean up my workstation first. We like to work clean. I'm going to get my peel out and place my dough. When I shake on my peel, you can see it's almost the entire size. So 15 or 16 inches. Awesome, right? Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to give it a little shake, make sure it's loose like a hockey puck. And I'm going to take my edges, I'm going to kind of pinch them a little bit and stretch at the same time. This is doing a couple of things. It's adding a little definition to my crust. I can see those air bubbles, which I love, but I'm adding a little definition, meaning each bite is going to be unique. Some people will pop their bubbles. Some people will let them go. What do you feel like doing today? We're going to let them go. All right. So I've kind of stretched this out pretty good, if you can see. I'm going to give it one final shake. It's still loose. If it's not, I will pick an edge up and throw some flour underneath it to make sure I'm ready to sauce. And because we're doing a New York pizza, I'm going to use the same crushed tomato, just crushed tomatoes and salt, but we're going to add some New York flavor to this. And you'll see as we go what I mean by that. So spoon it on, be generous, and then kind of spread it out. Remember, less is more. I bring it close to the edge, but not over the edge, just like life, right? All right, got my sauce going. Boom. And now we're going to grate some cheese. And I'm going to use, yes, we're bringing it back, the Wonder Shredder. Boom. Our cheese, New York traditionally, you're looking at a low moisture mozzarella, and that's what this is. It's a whole milk, low moisture mozzarella. And we shred it right onto the pizza itself. I love these Wonder Shredders. Hard to find, hard to find. I go all the way around. I tend to go a little heavier in the center for some reason. I don't know why. I think it's cool. Is that it? Is it cool, Chef? Very cool, he says. All right, so I got my cheese on. I'm going to use a little bit of fresh mozzarella too, and just a little bit. I like the contrast of the two mozzarellas on there. I kind of just break this up into smaller pieces. And you got a couple of different cheeses on top. I'm going to turn around as I'm doing this. I'm working with a gas oven today. I'm going to switch my oven over to broil. High. If you have two settings on your oven, you have a low broiler and a high broiler. I just go high. Before I add anything else, I'm going to give it a little more pinch here. I'm going to give it a shake again. And it's going back and forth still, okay? I'm pretty confident. And now for the magic touches. Didn't we have some? Yeah, here we go. I'm going to add some crushed red pepper, dried, right? Just kind of sprinkle it on. Not too much, just a nice amount. And then I'm going to take some dried oregano and sprinkle this on top. Now it's smelling like a New York place, right? Don't you think, Chef? We had a line out the door here, waiting for people to come in for slices. From New York, yeah, they took a bus in. That's great. So anyway, got my pizza stretched out. I've got it topped. One last check before I go in the oven, and this is really important. Give it one last final shake like this. It's still sliding like a hockey puck, so I'm good. Back of this peel goes to the back of the steel. I just kind of slide off. Take a deep breath. We got this, right, Chef? Right. All right, so I'm gonna grab a rag, open my oven up. My oven racks are nicely slide out. So back of my peel to the back of the steel, and I just kind of forward and back, smoothly. Gorgeous, huh? Close her up. And traditionally, New York, I would say, Chef, you probably, I'm guessing, mostly made in like a deck oven a lot of times, 500 or 600 degrees. We're not going to use a broiler with that. We're going to kind of go straight bake. Because we're in a class, I'm going to expedite that a little bit, so you guys have to stand around. But we're going to, I did a 2 minute with the broiler on. I'm going to switch the broiler off, and we'll finish this for 2 or 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes. It's got more toppings, more sauce than a traditional pizza that we make. Looking at like a 3 to 5 minute bake using our Pro Steel, which is awesome, super hot, and it's going to be delicious. Probably a good time to pause and jump into some questions, right?
Yeah, you want to go with recipe?
Yeah, let's do that first. That's a great question. Let's go right to the dough recipe first. Is that what you mean? Yeah, the recipe itself for the dough, and we'll write this out for you guys too, but it's 500 grams of organic bread flour, 325 grams of filtered water, 16 grams of sea salt, 25 grams of olive oil, 25 grams of, we're using Mike's hot honey, but you could use sugar or regular honey, and we used 2 grams of yeast. We mix, we bulk proof that for 24 hours, then we cold proof it or ferment it for 1 to 2 days. Ball it up and bake. That's your pizza dough recipe. Anybody else?
Double loaf flour versus bread flour.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Someone asked, what do we do, 00 flour versus bread flour? To be honest, it's dealer's choice, meaning you can use whatever you'd like. Traditionally, I think in the New York style slices that you're seeing, they're using a bread flour or higher. I don't know if they use 00. Traditionally, 00 is used in the Neapolitan higher temp ovens. It's a finer grain of flour, Italian. But again, it doesn't matter. Use what you like. Experiment. Be adventurous.
What's the central milling flour you use?
So we're using central milling, organic, high mountain, high gluten flour. So this has been 2 minutes. I want to take a peek and see what's going on here. It looks amazing, by the way. You guys can see this. Let's turn it a little bit. It's gorgeous. So I can turn my broiler off at this point, and we're going to do just a regular bake. You good there? Whatever that is. Where's bake? There we go. Convection bake. And I'm going to put 2 more minutes on it just for fun so I don't burn it.
Can you use a rolling pin?
Can I use a rolling pin? Yes, you can definitely use a rolling pin. However, be mindful that those air bubbles kind of make the pizza. And so when we're taking a rolling pin out, we're squishing those air bubbles. It makes it a different. I like to use a rolling pin for thin crust, but for New York style, I think they're stretching it out by hand. But don't be shy. If you have to use it, if you're more comfortable with a rolling pin, go for it. No one's gonna critique you.
What's the hydration level on that thing?
So this hydration is 65%. And how I get to the hydration level in pizza dough is to take my water content and divide it by my flour. In our case, it's 325 divided by 500. That equals 65%. We find to be a pretty good ratio of water to flour.
Why 2 grams of yeast and not 1?
Well, we're using a little bit of sugar or honey. We just thought, and you know what? And a lot of times for my New York style, I'm only doing a 1-day ferment. Just 2 grams, not gonna hurt anything. Just gives a little bit more of a head start. Works faster. I don't think you need to use more than that.
Will this be posted after?
Yes. So we're gonna post this up on YouTube, probably on Facebook. We'll send an email out with the details of the recipe, procedures, obviously this video. We hope it's helpful.
Temperature of water.
Great question. What is the temperature of the water? It is room temperature. Now, the other thing is it's cold. It's winter, right? So when I turn my faucet on, that water's really cold. So with that in mind, I'm gonna get my water out to make my dough maybe a half hour earlier than typical than in the summer. Because if it's really cold, it's gonna take longer to activate that, to get this thing going. So again, for me, water out, let it rest at room temperature for long enough so it is room temperature, not cold. That's about 4 minutes, guys. So let's take a peek of what we got here. It's looking awesome, huh, Chef? What do you think? Now, my bottom is almost there. I'm actually I could give this another minute or two of baking. I'm gonna show you guys this so we good with the questions, right? So I'm not done yet. That's been about 4 minutes. Let me close my oven up here. Just want to give you guys a look how gorgeous this is. I mean, it's fun because you can smell that. Can you smell that? Incredible. Smell-o-vision. It's 16 inches of just incredible goodness. It's going to be so good. I'm going to finish this off with some basil. At the end, take my basil and just kind of pop it on big leaves. And that's our New York style pizza. Class. You guys, and it smells so good. Thank you guys for being here. We could not do this without you. You rock.